is Noreen from joyacards.com and welcome to my video. Hey, today I'm going to show you a bunch of tips and tricks on how to make this card. Now I'm doing a bunch of things and I might break it out into little shorts as well, but there is blending here, there's masking, there's watercoloring, there's color layering, there's fussy cutting and bumping things up. So stay tuned for that. Now we're going to be using inspirational sketches, and it's in the new mini catalog on page 65. And I've got a bunch of these catalogs. If you want one, put your info in the comments and I'll get one out to you. And while you're at it, like and subscribe. That'd be awesome. So let's go ahead and get started. And oh, also I'm using the DS paper from the Celebration. And if you don't know what that is, what you do is you place an order in the catalog, any of the catalogs, for $50 or more, and you get something for free. So we're going to be using this DS paper as well. So this card is pretty easy for the bones of it. So all it is a 5.5 by 4 1/4. I've used Highland Heather, and I've got basic black Highland Heather and white on the inside, and then basic black just a little bit. So it's like 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 is the dimension on the black. And then you're going to need a basic white, and this is going to be 4 by 5 1/4. And then on the inside, you've also got this little bird that I fussy cut to go inside. So let's get started. Now, the only die that I'm using in addition is Countryside Corners, and it's the smallest die. And I've already cut it out and stamped it with Stays On, because I'm going to be stamping this whole thing in Stays On because we're going to be doing some watercoloring. So I've stamped it and I've cut it out. I have also cut out a piece of foam adhesive sheet. So you just take your die, put it on the sheet. I run it through a couple of times to make sure that it cuts through all the way. And now I'm going to go ahead and layer that up. And here is a trick. Here's my first trick. So I'm going to take off the back of the foam adhesive sheet. I'm going to lay it on my silicone craft sheet. And then I'm going to take off the top layer as well. Now I'm going to take my sentiment tag and I'm going to layer it up here. And then I'm going to leave it on my silicone craft sheet until I put it on my card. And this won't go anywhere, and you can pull it off when you need it. So silicone craft sheet, if you don't have one, I don't know how you live without it. This is awesome. So that's my first bump up. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get these little birds here. So I fussy cut one and put one on the inside. And of course, we've got this one bumped up on the outside. Now, why I'm bumping up is because there's so much going on in the background. To bump these two things up will really put it up there. And even though the bird is kind of hidden, it kind of isn't, because by bumping it up, we moved it forward. So let me show you this paper. And like I said, this is in the Celebration catalog. So when you buy 50 from any of the catalogs, you get this for free. So we're going to pick out a bird. So I'm going to pick out this bird. Actually, we're going to pick out two, because one for the front and one for the inside. So I'm just going to cut this out. So here's some basic fussy cutting. What you're going to do is you're going to cut out most of what you don't need on the paper. Now, I'm going to go by the legs because I am keeping the legs, and I'm going to go up to the beak, and I'm going to cut that off as well. Now, when it comes to here, I'm going to go to the tail and just go from tail tip to tail tip, and then to the other leg right here, and really get it down to a usable kind of area. Now, I'm going to very, very, very slowly, and I am like the most impatient person, but sit down, relax, and just enjoy the very slow movement of fussy cutting. And when you get to a turn, as you're cutting, just slightly turn this paper, and you'll get a really good cut. Now, I would use my brother's ScanNCut, which we are going to use up here in a few minutes, but there's a lot of lightness to this bird, and it probably won't pick it up. So I'm just going to fussy cut it because it's not like a huge detailed piece. So I'm just going to fussy cut this, and I'll be right back. And there's your fussy cut bird. Now, if this had like an outline on it, a black outline, I would take one of my Stampin' Rights and just mark the edges. But since this is so light of paper and the ink is really light, what it does, because I did it on here, is it drinks in that ink too much. Whoopsie, and it doesn't turn out so well. So I would just try to get your bird as close to the edge as possible without all the white showing. Now, when you look at this card, you're actually seeing the flower stamped 4 different times. And then the mushrooms, if you notice, the flowers sometimes go right behind it. And what I've done is I've masked it. So in order to make a mask, you're going to need some copy paper, like the cheap stuff. So this is just recycled paper here. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use my StaysOn only because I'm going to use it the rest of the time. It's no big deal. I've also taped the inner lid inside the lid, if that makes any sense. I use the double-sided tape. So when I pull it off, that lid comes off with it. So now I'm going to take that stamp, and if you notice, I'm using 2 stamping pads. This is an intricate stamp, and even though it won't matter on the detail for this, because we're just going to cut the outline, I'm still going to do it. Also, StaysOn stamps kind of sit around for a while. It's not generally my go-to stamp, so make sure you've got your refill out here and refill your stamping pad, because these sometimes don't come out very dark, and we do want that image when we actually stamp it on the paper, the real paper here, to be dark. So, and it, you know, when we fussy cut this, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do because there's a trick coming up. I want it to be as dark as possible. Now I've done 4 of the flowers. Now I'm going to do 1 of the mushroom on the cheap copy paper, just like that. Now, fussy cutting. We are going to fussy cut these out and use them as masks, but this is a lot bigger and a lot more detailed than the little tiny bird here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my brother's ScanNCut. If you are a big card maker, this is the thing to use, and it's way different from the Cricut. I also have a Cricut as well, but what a brother will do is it scans an image, and it can do all kinds of things, but one of the things that it does is that it'll cut the outline of your piece out. Now, there is a trick, and that is it is following a continuous line, like a circle. So if you had a circle, it's just going to cut the circle, but if there's a break in the line, it's going to go inside. So what you need to do is go through this stamped image and look for broken lines. Also, I don't want it to get too detailed, like between the leaf and this bud. I kind of put a line between the 2 leaves because I don't want it to go in there. Considering this is copy paper, it's really flimsy and it might rip. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to go through here and look for lines that are broken or lines that are going into a deep detail, like right here between the open flower and this leaf. I'm going to also put another little line there. But even just slightly broken, like dotted line, you want to close that up. So go through your flowers and for the mushroom and close them. Now on the mushroom, I'm going to go to the end and I'm going to connect all these broken lines here on the bottom for sure. And then just kind of scan through it and see if I find any more broken lines, because I don't want the Brother ScanNCut to cut that. So I'm going through. So I've closed all the lines. Let's pretend that I've done that. And I'm going to show you the Brother ScanNCut. So the first thing I'm doing is grabbing my Brother ScanNCut mat. Now these mats are notorious for being horrible. So what I've done is I've taken my delicate frog tape. There's a link in the description of my video. You can get these everywhere, especially Amazon. And I've taped this down. If I didn't tape it, you wouldn't be able to do this because the stickiness on this mat is just almost non-existent after like the first couple of times. So I've got this all taped down. Remember, you got to close up all those broken lines. I've already done that. And let's go to the Brother ScanNCut. So here's my Brother ScanNCut. I've got the ScanNCut DX, the SD, X125, which is the $300 version of the really, really expensive one. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And what you're going to see when it comes up is the screen. Now, I've already opened up the door here. I know it's kind of hard to tell. I've got my camera going here. And we're going to feed this in, but not until this boots up. So if it takes too long, just hit and I'll get that thing in there, the home button. Okay. And it says the carriage and mat will move initially into position. So hit OK. Now, if you heard that, that was a little engine moving here. All these little things were going forward. Now I'm going to take my mat, and you're going to notice there's an arrow, and I'm going to line it up here into the arrow, and I'm going to hit the feed button right here, and it's going to feed in just a little bit like that. Okay. So it's already kind of fed it in by me pushing that button. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit scan. Then direct cut, and then the machine. Now I have a video, I'll try to link it up here somewhere, to a little tutorial on this whole thing again. But it's going to take my piece and it's going to scan it all the way through, and then it's going to bring it back. And then we're going to see if I got all the little broken lines covered up. And what we're going to get is this. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this in and take this in like this, just in case you have any marks on your mat. You don't want that to be included. And then hit OK, and it's going to process it for a second. So it's looking for broken lines on where to go. And what you're looking for now is a complete piece. Like this one's fine, this one's fine, this one is fine. This one is not. You see how it went in? That means there's broken lines in there. And this one appears to be fine too. And this is the piece of tape. So we're going to go back and we're going to go to this flower here and we're going to close up some broken lines. So I'm going to go ahead and hit home and OK, because I'm going to delete that and I'm going to kick it out. And now look. After I darkened all the edges here, now I've only got the 5 cuts. So I'm going to hit OK, and then it's going to process it. And now you can edit. Like if there was something else in there that you didn't want, or you want to make sure it's only doing those 5, you can just do the edit. And I'm fine. So I didn't have to delete anything. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and then OK again. And then I'm going to cut, or select cut right here, and then start. And make sure there's nothing behind your machine because it'll run into it. So delicate frog tape. Don't use the other kind of tape, washi tape, because what'll happen is it doesn't stick too well and it'll wrap around your scanning drum in the machine and you'll have to wait until it eventually comes out. I actually did that. And it took like 6 months for it to kick it out. So it's doing all the scans right now, or all the cuts right now. So I'll give it a minute and we'll kick it out. So it stopped cutting. So I'm going to go over here and hit OK. And then we're going to kick it out. And OK. Now just take it over to your work surface. Grab your little spatula here. You can pull up the paper. You're going to see that it's going to basically have this negative here, just a few pieces it's holding on to, just like that. And then you've got all your mats. So I don't have to sit there and fussy cut my mats, and they're perfect. Now you can even have this cut a little bit of an edge to it. So the Brother ScanNCut does a whole bunch of things, but this is basically how I do my masks for anything that's really intense. I mean, the bird was easy. I just went ahead and fussy cut that. But these, yeah, I used my Brother ScanNCut. Now let's get to our stamping finally. So we are going to use StazOn because we're going to be doing some watercoloring. Now, definitely, even though I just re-inked this earlier, I'm going to re-ink this again because it's a real detailed stamp. And I want to make sure that that ink is as dark as I can get it. After I put the ink on, I'm going to push it down with a white disposable spoon and then just wipe it off, and I can use it again. White because I want to know if all the ink's off, so I'll clean this off later. And then I'm going to grab my mushroom stamp first. Three, two, one. And I've got my white paper that's the front of the card here. This is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And I'm going to grab a piece of scratch paper and put it right under, because I'm going to make sure that I stamp the bottom of this off. So I'm going to ink up my stamp really well, and then make sure that I get it in the middle and stamp the bottom right off. And if you notice, I'm using stamping pads for both the ink cartridge and the stamp itself, so I get a perfect impression. So before we put our mask onto our mushroom, I want to cut out all these little pieces in here. Now my glass has a mat, so I've got my mat out and my piece, and let's get the X-Acto blade and cut those out. Now on the flowers, I'm not going to cut any of the spaces out, because I'm not going to really cross too much over like I am for the mushroom. So what I'm going to do is, and I didn't even cross that much here on the card. I think I might cross a little bit more in this one here. So I want all these spaces, and I want to maybe see the flower behind it. So I'm going to take the X-Acto knife, and Stampin' Up makes one. So I've got one here, and I'm on my mat, and I'm just going to cut these out. So I cut here, 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 and a little bit here and here. So definitely cut those pieces out, but you don't have to worry about the flower. We'll leave that. Now we're going to take the teal Tombow. It's the one that says removable adhesive, so teal color, and we're going to give it some tape here. Now, when we're masking, you want to make sure that all the little webs are not poking through those holes, because you don't want anything to interfere when we blend the background. So make sure all those little webs are out in between, especially in between those holes. And if you rip a little piece of it off, it's okay. It's just a mask. So that's all taped with that removable tape. And I'm going to put on the piece that ripped off when I was doing it. Make sure it's right on that stamp. Okay, there's your first mask. Now to stamp the flowers. Now, when I stamp it the first time, look at where your flower is poking out and kind of turn it. So when we stamp this, maybe turn it a little bit, kind of make it look like they're different groups of flowers. And I'm going to stamp this one really good. And I'm on a stamping pad on the ink pad, and then on a stamping pad here. Even though I have this glass, which is awesome, it is better to use a stamping pad, because there are just so many details with this flower. You definitely want to do that. Okay, going to put the lid on the StazOn, and then we're going to get out another one of those flowers that we cut, and we're going to put down that teal tape. This is the greatest tape, because it like sticks, but it doesn't stick. It's a very annoying if you ever try to use it for anything else. And then we're going to match this up here onto the flower. Okay, and it's going to hang over. That's perfect. Okay, then we're going to switch again and get the StazOn out again. And this time when after I ink this up, I'm going to make sure I turn that flower a little bit. And I do want to go over the mushroom a little bit more than it is in this picture here. So I'm going to turn, so my flower is that way. So maybe I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to try to hit over that mushroom too, because I do want it to poke behind it. So we're going to do a couple little tweaks to my card here. That's okay. And then you are going to see like a little bit of a gap here. That's okay. Go ahead, and then we're going to take another mask and that other teal crummy tape, which is awesome for masking. And we're going to mask over this one here, just like that. Now to the other side, so I'm going to stamp this real good. And then I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to turn it this way and stamp it real good here. Make sure you're on your mats, and you've got scratch paper underneath because I'm stamping off a bit. Take another one of those masks we made, put the teal tape on it, and match it up, just like so. Then take your stamp last time, stamp it up real good. I'm going to turn my flower a little bit, and I'm going to go right here. Pull it up. I'm going to take my other mask and put that on just like so. So that's what we're looking at. So all 5 masks are on there. Now we're going to go ahead and blend the background. And I've got my blending brushes, and this is Balmy Blue and Boho Blue. I'm going to start out with Balmy, and I've got my scratch paper here. You're going to tap off and circle in. Now I just inked this. It's got a lot of ink on it. I'm not used to my ink pads being so wet. And I'm going to go over the masks as well, because there are places where there's a gap, like in the mushroom. I had you cut out the gaps. So I'm going to do that. And this will be real quick because my ink pad is really inked. And then I'm going to switch over into Boho Blue and give it a little bit of a different color here. I kind of like to do a darker color like on the edges a little bit. So the top here, maybe on the bottom here, and then just a light little bit over the middle, just to give it a different color. So that's the blending. Now let's take off the mask. Okay, now I'm going to take off the mask here, and let's reveal what's underneath. And any kind of spaces we're just going to fix. Not a problem. And there we go. And now we're going to be doing some watercoloring. The first thing you're going to need is one of the water pens. Now I am using the one, it's on page 137, it's number 8, and it comes in a 3-pack. And this is the pointed one, the finest one. And then we're going to take crumb cake and pecan pie, and we're going to start out with crumb cake. So I got a little piece of paper towel. I'm getting the water on the tip here, and then I'm going to test it out in the lid and on the pad, and take off any excess water because we don't want too much water. This is not watercolor paper. We're just using regular paper. And I'm going to fill in the entire mushroom. So go ahead and fill the whole thing in. Now you can do it all the way around, or you can leave like little light spots, or do it really light where you think the natural light will hit it, like maybe in the middle there, just do it really light. But I'm going to cover the whole thing in with the crumb cake, even the stem. And when I first put the ink on, when it's the darkest, do that in the areas where there's shade on the mushroom. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. Now that I'm done with crumb cake, I'm just going to clean off the brush here by squeezing the water out, and then I'm going to go into pecan pie, and I'm definitely going to do the under part of the mushroom here, and then all its little shadows on the mushroom top itself. So the darker one is for underneath, a bit of the stem, and then just to highlight the shadows on the mushroom. So that's what I'm doing right here. So I'm going to finish this, and I'll be right back. Now I've done the mushroom with the watercolors. Now if you really want to get some more color out of them, you can take your blending pens and give them a little bit more accent and just a darker filling in. So I'm going to go ahead and do some etching with my blending pens, and then I'll be back again. Now clean off your brush again. We're going to take Daffodil Delight and we're going to put in the middle to the flowers first, because you always do the light color first when you're doing the watercoloring. And I'm just going to do the white part. I'm not going to go over the black. I think it kind of looks a little neat when I do that. So just the insides of the tip of the flowers. And there's the little yellow parts. Doesn't that look good with not covering up all the black there? Now, next, I want to show you what I did. So on this card, the leaves, I used what the color is for the DS paper, and that's garden green. But I just think it looks a little muddied in there. So I went ahead and stamped out that flower a bunch of times and used a whole bunch of colors like Granny Apple Green, Parakeet, Lost Lagoon, and Old Olive. And I believe the best one that looked, good against the blue was Old Olive. Even though it's not part of the colors in the DS paper, I'm going to switch from Garden Green to Old Olive. So let's grab that. So clean off your brush again. And then now the hard part is determining what is flower and what is leaf. So you really kind of have to look at it or stamp it out a couple of times and figure it out. So I've done it a few times, so I know what it looks like. So I'm going to go in. Now you're going to notice as you're doing your watercoloring that you're going to have to fill in some blue within the flower and even along the mushroom, but that's okay. We'll do that when we're done. So I know that this right here is a leaf. Now even we'll cheat a little bit and look at my my flower here, because sometimes I thought, well, maybe that is, no, okay. So so just go ahead and start filling in what you believe is a leaf. And I'm going to do mine and I'll be right back. Also, as I'm going and I'm picking up water, since this is such a dark color, sometimes that water really gets to be too much. Use your paper towel here and kind of soak up the extra before you put it on your paper. It's just better that you do that way, and instead of putting a glob of water on your print. Now that you watercolored the leaves, go in and take your blending pens and give those leaves some definitions. Start out with your light first, so you get used to how dark the color is, and then you can switch to the dark one once you feel a little comfortable of what it can do. So I'm going to go ahead and give it some definition here with the pens. Also, if you have these Stampin' Up pens, these are also great, especially with these leaves, the veins in them. And I've got Old Olive and I've got Mossy Meadow out, and Mossy Meadow is great because it gives that extra coloring to it, and these markers go extremely well with each other. So just to give it more detail and just give it some more veins, so I'm going to go through with my markers. Now we're going to color the flowers. Now I'm going to use Fresh Frieza and Flirty Flamingo only, and then I'm going to use the blending pens to kind of give it a little more color. And the big flower, I'm going to do just Fresh Frieza. The smaller open one, I'm going to use only Flirty Flamingo. And the half daisy here, I'm going to use a combination of both. So let's start out with the Fresh Frieza. And I've got my water painter all ready here. And the big flower only here. And I'm just going to go ahead and watercolor that whole flower in. Now I stamped this 4 times, so I've got 4 of these flowers to do. So I'm going to color these and I'll be right back. Now that I've done all the big flowers and Fresh Frieza only, I'm going to take my blending pens and I'm just going to give them a little more definition. I'm going to start with the light one and see how comfortable I get with that, and then I'll switch to the darker one and give it a little bit more, and I might even use a fine tip on the Fresh Frieza Stampin' Up to fill in a little bit more. So I'm going to do that and be right back. Now we're going to go to our Flirty Flamingo, And we're only going to use the Flirty Flamingo on the medium-sized open flower. And we're going to do all 4 of those. So I'm going to paint these, and then I'm going to move to the blending pens. Now I'm going to go ahead and go in with the pens. I'll do the light, the dark, and then the Stampin' Right. Now for the rest of the flowers, I'm going to use a combination of both Fresh Frieza and Flirty Flamingo. And I'm going to lay down the Fresh Frieza first. So on this first open daisy, I'm going to do the whole thing. And then I'm going to put a layer of the Flirty Flamingo on top. Now this whole time, we've also been, and you'll see on your piece, that there are gaps. And the final thing we're going to do is fill in the gaps with Balmy Blue. So here's the first one with Fresh Frieza. I'm going to clean my thing in between and then get out the Flirty Flamingo. And I'm just going to layer it on top. So it like creates a different color without switching the colors up too much. And I can also use my blending pens and my Stampin' Right as well. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in this. And then I might even jump over to a bud while I've got my ink wet. And I can even do the reverse on another one. I'll put the Flirty Flamingo down on the bottom and the other on top. Now the final touch to the whole thing is to fill in the gaps from the flowers so you can see the background. So you got your paper towel out, make sure you don't have too much water on there, and just dab the blue, Balmy Blue in between those gaps and fill it in nicely like so. So I'm going to do that and I'll be right back. And that's the coloring. Now, if you notice, I switched the colors on the leaves, and I think it looks a lot better with the old olive. So let's go ahead and put the rest of this card together. We're going to go ahead and just put this on the card front that we did earlier. And I've got the bird stuck to my hand. That's funny. And put it right here. And here's that bird we fussy cutted. And I put a couple of dimensionals behind him. And I'm going to put him right here on the bottom. And because he's dimensional, he really kind of pops out. And then here's the tag that we did earlier as well. I'm going to put that in the middle. And then I am going to put on, these are Blooming Pearls. And they have been, these are from the mini catalog, but they're putting them in the next catalog too, because it's they're coming back. They're not fully retired. And of course, I put on the tag a little crooked because I did it quickly. So I'm going to just pull it right up and center it like so. And that is the card. And actually, no, we've got one more bird to put on in the middle. So I just nailed on the little bird inside, and that's the card. So please like and subscribe, and that'll do it for me. Thanks. Bye.